All righty, guys. How is everybody doing here? Welcome into Slaughterhouse Sports, and we are going to talk about Minnesota football today on the show. And I think that Minnesota is one of the more fun teams in college football because everybody's talking about in the Big Ten, they're going to be talking about Ohio State. They're going to be talking about Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon. They're going to be talking about those four football teams, also USC, a little bit of Nebraska, a little bit of Iowa now with a new transfer quarterback. But Minnesota is a really fun, kind of sleeper team in college football. I would say that they're right about like the 35th or 40th team, that I don't think they're a top 25, but I think that they're 35 to 40. And this could be the year kind of like 2019 where PJ Fleck kind of raises expectation around Minnesota and you have just a legendary year. I mean, 2019 was the year when they had so much talent. It was Rashad Bateman. It was Tanner Morgan, who came from Western Michigan, a winning quarterback. You had Tyler Johnson, the local kid from Minnesota, who was an absolute star, still playing football. He played on the Bucs and won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Tyler Johnson, the heart and soul and one of the best wide receivers in the history of Minnesota football. Rashad Bateman. You also had Carter Coughlin, Antoine Winfield Jr. That team was a legendary team. Like, they went out to Fresno State. They played a double overtime game, and then they ended up beating Penn State at home, stormed the field, all of that. So that team just caught fire, and it was a magical ride. And then you look at Minnesota the following years, even last year, it was kind of average football, except, beating USC at home. That was a ton of fun to, watch something like that. That was great. And Perich is going to be a guy that's really, really exciting to watch. I think that John Nestor, who's an Iowa transfer at nickelback, is going to be an entertaining watch on the defensive side of the ball. It's interesting to see how Minnesota replaces Corey Hevermans. And I was kind of even a little surprised that Hevermans, the old defensive coordinator of Minnesota, I'm surprised that Miami ended up going after Hevermans after only 1 year of calling plays. I know he was with Greg Schiano quite a while, but Hevermans is very, very young, and I think it'll take a little bit of time for Hevermans to get his feet under him at Miami. So I thought that they had decent defense last year, but even against Rutgers, they got carved by Ethan Kaliakmanis late in that season. And against Michigan, they were down that entire game. I thought they played poorly in that Michigan game. That last little comeback, that was kind of some late add-on TDs to make the score look a little bit better. I could even use more harsh language. But PJ Fleck, the life program, row the boat, hyper culture, the elite mentality, the life program, the academically, socially, spiritually, like all of PJ Fleck and everything about this program, everything about this culture that gets used, I really think that this team can be a very tight, cohesive unit and can be a fantastic football team. And I like everything actually about PJ Fleck. I love the goal of being elite. I love that he's putting a limitless ceiling on this football team. I love that he's in year 8 of this job, but he still has so much passion, so much confidence. And it really feels like a new age of Minnesota football, all right? And it starts, right? It starts with a couple of guys. I was going to mention the quarterback because, again, if you're going to have a pretty good season, you're probably going to start with the quarterback, and in fact, I will. They recruit a quarterback that was pretty much injured in his junior season of playing at Fayetteville High School for the Fayetteville Bulldogs. That's right. They get a quarterback out of Arkansas in Drake Lindsay. Now, this guy is 6'5". He is like a Joe Flacco statuesque Nate Stanley type of real pocket passer that isn't going to beat you that with his legs that much, but this guy can absolutely throw the football, all right? Think maybe of a little bit of Nick Foles, 6'5", huge quarterback. Big, not even that thin, not like Matt Ryan thin, and this guy can probably throw it about 65 or 70 yards. This guy has a huge arm, and he's going to be a really fun quarterback. I mean, he's a guy who won a state championship. He has all the intangibles in the world. It's just that Bobby Petrino in Arkansas, they looked at the injury. They didn't think he's mobile enough to play at Fayetteville, to play for the University of Arkansas. He's going to have a massive chip on the shoulder, which is what PJ Fleck loves, because PJ Fleck was that player when he was at Northern Illinois. So Drake Lindsay, the undisputed quarterback of Minnesota. They didn't go out and get any transfers. Actually, they got one transfer quarterback that's going to be a backup. But again, Max Brosmer was a New Hampshire guy who played 5 years of football. One of the smartest guys that you're ever going to meet in your life is Max Brosmer. I mean, this guy is an astrophysicist that used to play quarterback. So Drake Lindsay now is going to be one of the more entertaining players to watch in this conference. They also return a very good running back. They return a running back by the name of Darius Taylor. Now, Darius Taylor had a successful year last year. He was able to have 10 touchdowns, and he almost rushed for 1,000. He was at 980 yards. Really catch the football in an incredible manner as well. 54 receptions. So 350 yards. This guy's going to be an outlet, all right, for Lindsay and this offense, okay? Then you look at a senior, a guy who's been around the block a lot in Lemecki Brockington. This guy's played at Minnesota for a very, very long time. You look at him last year. He had 18 catches for them last year. He's going to be starting for them. I think he got hurt a little bit. I mean, Minnesota's just had a revolving door of wide receivers, okay? And that's what, and that's a position that I'm a little bit worried about, okay, ironically. They've always had really good receivers at Minnesota. Like, you look at Rashad, you look at Tyler Johnson, even Dalen Wright, who ended up leaving to go to TCU. Minnesota's been a program that has had really, really good receiver play. And unfortunately, it's gone by the wayside here the last several years. I think they even had a guy after Tanner Morgan at quarterback. Minnesota kind of went through, they tried actually Athan Kaliakmanis. They tried him at quarterback and flat out didn't work. It was bad passing. So, and then tight end play, you have Jamison Gears at tight end and Drew Biber. Like, these are okay. The real X factor is Malachi Coleman. I mean, Malachi was a guy who played both sides of the ball. He's 6'5". He's a guy who could have played cornerback. He is so fast. He has one of the fastest track times in all of Nebraska. I think he's from Lincoln, Nebraska. He was committed and was in that Nebraska class. All right, he ends up transferring to Minnesota. All right, so yes, he went to Lincoln Southeast, I believe, the Knights. And I'm pumped to see Malachi play ball. All right, Malachi, let's get his official height and measurement, 6'5", 195. Malachi Coleman, if he ever could see the field and could pop, like, he changes the ceiling of this offense. And also, Coy Perich is going to play some wide receiver as well. Coy is the best player by far on this football team. He's the Travis Hunter of Minnesota football. He's a Cooper DeJean type player, unbelievable cornerback, and a guy that can return punts, can do just about everything on the football field, maybe even like Dante Hall. He's a game-changing player. Against USC, he had one of the best performances you'll ever see from a freshman. He's one of the most talented players to ever come through Minnesota football. This guy can be a first-team All-American cornerback. This is a guy that I expect, if he stays healthy, he's going to be drafted in the first 50 picks of the NFL draft, even as a safety, And Tyler Nubin, now you get Coy Perich, like, Minnesota has hit in their secondary. I like their secondary a ton, and I like their football team as they go into this year. They're promoting a defensive coordinator. I'm not too worried about the defensive coordinator that they're promoting in Collins. I think that he's going to do a heck of a job, and then I believe that you have Simon and Harbaugh still calling plays on offense. Let's look at the schedule. This is why I think Minnesota can be a playoff team. This is why I think that they're, kind of in a really interesting bet. I would hammer the over for Minnesota football. I know that Drake Lindsay's a big question mark. I know that these wide receivers are really, really big question marks, when you look at this overall football team. But I'm telling you guys that I see 9 wins on this season, and I even see 10 wins as a possibility, which would, if you win 9 games, if you're Minnesota, you're right in the playoff picture. If you win 10, I think you get into the playoffs. You look at this upcoming year, and we look at this upcoming football schedule, all right? And Minnesota is going to be favored in a lot of contests, okay, when we analyze this football season. Okay. Sorry, guys, just getting the upcoming schedule for 2025. The Golden Gophers. All right. Finally got it. All right. So Minnesota, and these times are announced, okay? All right, listen to the schedule. Are you guys seated? Are you guys? That's what I want to know. Like, first, are you guys seated? Because please, you guys, if you're standing up or whatever, you guys are gonna freak out when I read you the schedule, and just go on this journey with me. Open up your mind to a 10-2 PJ Fleck. Open up your mind to Minnesota being in the college football playoff, because it's not as far-fetched as it seems. Buffalo comes into Minnesota. That's a great, great game to open up your season. That game will be on Thursday. I love kicking it off them at 8 o'clock on FS1. They're going to cozy in with a kind of like a 31-14 kind of ugly win against Buffalo. Everybody's going to be watching Nebraska and Cincinnati at Arrowhead. You're just going to sneak in a win, right? You're going to sneak in an ugly win, right? The defense is going to carry you. The offense needs time to gain up to speed. We'll have Taylor run in a couple of touchdowns, right? That running back that I just talked about. Okay. Yep. And so they'll win that game. All right, I'm confident in that. They're going to be about a 13.5-point favorite against Buffalo. That's just me predicting. Then they're going to play the Northwestern at home. They're going to be about 8.5 or 9-point favorites. These are two bad offenses in Buffalo and Northwestern. Northwestern, again, they don't have any of the talent. They are as down could be after Pat Fitzgerald ended up getting fired. Okay, this team is not bouncing into Minnesota and winning. If Minnesota is even, if they are even playing around with these teams, then this projection will be foolish. Then they have a very interesting game where they have to go all the way out to the West Coast, where they go to Northern California to play Berkeley. They play Cal Berkeley at 10:30. This is going to be a really entertaining game. This game is going to be September 13th. This is going to be a late game. I cannot wait for this game. I think the fans of Minnesota are pumped for this game. I think that some of them will make the trip out to Berkeley, will go into the Bay Area. Beautiful in the Bay Area. Go to San Francisco, hang out, and then go see a game at Berkeley. Or if you're staying at home watching this game, Minnesota's going to be 2-0 at the time. And this football season, man, they are going to be getting really excited. Okay, and I believe that Minnesota will narrowly win this game, okay, and they'll win it in kind of a very ugly fashion. I think that this is going to be reminiscent of those Peyton Thorne teams, Auburn and Minnesota. Get out of there. That, my friends, is a cat that's getting on to soundboard and that is attempting to mess up the mojo that we have in our scheduling which again, we're not going to let that happen on this Sunday in late July. We are not going to let it derail our show. Bye week. So after Cal, your body's exhausted. You fly all the way out to LA, but you're feeling great. You're 3-0. You're excited. Bye week comes at a perfect time. Then guess who you play after the bye? You get revenge on the Scarlet Knights. You welcome in Rutgers. That's probably going to be a 3:30 afternoon kick or 4 o'clock. That's going to be on FS1 or the Big Ten Network exclusively. So you might even have to have a little bit of, alternative channels, put it that way. You might even be watching that on BTN too. Rutgers playing Minnesota. So again, Minnesota's going to be favored against Rutgers. If they're an underdog, they're a slight underdog to Cal. They're going to start off the season probably 4-0. Then they go to Ohio State. Now, this is going to be the game. Minnesota's undefeated. They're going to the Horseshoe, Ohio State. Ohio State plays Texas to open up the year. I'm down on Ohio State. I'll just tell you that. The reason I'm down on Ohio State is they have to replace two of the best play callers in the sport. They're replacing Jim Knowles, who's now at Penn State, who's a championship defensive coordinator. And they are also replacing, on offense, Chip Kelly, who was so overqualified to be an offensive coordinator. All right, and then they're breaking in a 6'1 quarterback from Cal and Julian Sayin, all right, who went to college in San Diego, that I'm not even that high on his ability to really be a game-changing quarterback. He doesn't really get outside the pocket that much. And if you're looking at Drake Lindsay versus Julian Sayin, more mobile. Okay, Julian Sayin has a quicker release, but Drake Lindsay can even throw the ball. He can even throw the football further than Julian Sayin. Julian Sayin's not going to test you down the field. All right, so Ohio State at the shoe. You take your shot against Ohio State. And in fact, Ohio State's going to Washington. That's going to be great. That's going to be sleepy Ohio State. They're going to be sleeping on the Gophers. Okay, Nebraska almost went in there and beat Ohio State last year at home. All right, and then guess what? At Illinois the following week. So I'm loving this. I think it could be a close game. I think, listen, if you have to make it really ugly like Minnesota, Michigan, I don't think you're going to go off the rails in that game at all. I don't think Ohio State, the only thing that could really hurt you is if Ohio State puts a beat down to you by 3 touchdowns. All right, I don't see that happening. You come home then, night game. All right, we get a night game against Purdue. At home, all right? Homecoming game. Love it. Barry Odom and the guys. Listen, I think Barry's going to do fine at Purdue, not this year. So, again, you start off with Northwestern, Rutgers, and Purdue at home, okay? And the only road trip you're going to is Ohio and then to Cal. So, overall in the season, I'm looking at this season, it should be 5-1 to start the season. I don't want to lose to Cal or Northwestern. I don't want to lose to Rutgers. The game against Cal is probably going to be the season because Minnesota's not going to be that great at that point in the year, and that's going to be a nervy West Coast game against Wilcox. I'm scared of that game, but that's a great game to view as a fan. Then Nebraska comes to Minnesota. This will be a one-possession game. I'm pretty high on Nebraska, too. I think they're a good team. I think they're an 8 or 9 win club. They got some really good defense. I think Dylan and Dana Holgerson, it'll be good. But again, I kind of view Minnesota as this spot as rising up in the spot. Then Minnesota does have to go to Iowa. So this is a tough part of the schedule. It's a tough part of the schedule. And in fact, I just butchered so much of the schedule, but there's a lot in this video I like. Here's even an interesting adjustment to Minnesota football. Instead of playing Northwestern, they technically play Northwestern week 2. They even play 2 Northwesterns. They're playing the Louisiana Northwestern. Shout out to my main man, Dave, who comes on this show, Davey Longhorns, okay? They play Northwestern State at noon. They play Northwestern at Wrigley Field. A little baseball game later in the year. But so far, right, we have the Gophers 5-1. I don't think anybody is opposed to that, right? Nebraska and at Iowa. Nebraska, that game's going to be a pick-em game, or Nebraska at most, if Nebraska's hot, will be a 2-point favorite. At Iowa, again, Iowa's going to be decent with Glenowski at quarterback. Try to split that game, and then you have Michigan State. So at the break, with 3 games remaining in the year, I have Minnesota 7-2. Okay, I have them 7-2. Then to get to 9 wins, you just have to beat Northwestern and get Paul Bunyan's axe against Wisconsin. That'll be dead by the time that game comes around, because Wisconsin has the hardest schedule, because Luke Fickell has always been overrated. He had one great season at Cincinnati. He screwed up with hiring Phil Longo. They stink, and I'm excited for Minnesota to be in rare form. They go to Autzen Stadium to play the Ducks. They get a bye week. Again, they're going to be a big underdog in that game. Just don't get blown out in that contest. So this team could be a very Indiana-like football team. This is a 9 or 10 win season and team. Okay, I see them beating Nebraska at home. Is it possible that they beat Ohio State? If they do, they are going to go right into the college football playoff. I think that Minnesota is that team. I don't think it's Iowa. I don't even think it's the Illinois Fighting Illini. I see this team, okay, kind of like Missouri a little bit in the SEC. All right, I love the schedule. Perich is really good. You have continuity on defense. You have a returning running back. You have a pretty solid offensive line. Okay, you have Brockington. Maybe Malachi Coleman will come into the fold. This football team, they believe, and I believe that you're going to see a jump in production. It's going to be a 9 or a 10 win football team, and it's going to be a college football playoff team in the Big Ten. It's going to be the Minnesota Golden Gophers football program.